Hello everyone, we are from Group 6 and today we would like to present about Chapter 11, which will be talking about communication. No individual, group, or organization can exist without sharing meaning among its members. It is only thus that we can convey information and ideas. Communicating, however, is more than merely imparting meaning. That meaning must also be understood. If one group member speaks only German, and the others do not know the language, the German speaker will not be fully understood. Therefore, communication must include both the transfer and the understanding of meaning. Communication serves four major functions within a group or organization, which are control, motivation, emotional expression, and information. The first function is to control, which communication acts to control member behavior in several ways. For example, organizations have authority hierarchies and formal guidelines employees are required to follow. The next function is communication fosters motivation by clarifying what employees must do and how well they're doing it and how they can improve. The formation of specific goals, feedback on progress toward the goals, and reward for desired behavior all stimulate motivation and require communication. The next one is that communication within the group is a fundamental mechanism by which members show their satisfaction and frustrations. Communication, therefore, provides for the emotional expression of feelings and fulfillment of social needs. They can do that by having a sharing session or even asking the other employees what do they think about the other. And then the final function of communication is to facilitate decision making. Communication provides the information individuals and groups need to make decisions by transmitting the data needed to identify and evaluate choices will be made. This is the communication process diagram, which will be explained in the next slide. The next one, we are going to talk about the communication process. According to the book, the key parts of this model are first one, the sender, the next one is the encoding, the next one is the message, and the fourth one is the channel, fifth is decoding, the sixth is receiver, and then the noise, and the last one is feedback. The sender initiates a message by encoding a thought. The message is the actual physical product of the sender's encoding. The next one is the channel, is the medium through which the message travels. The sender selects it, determining whether to use a formal or informal channel. The receiver is the persons to whom the message is directed, who must first translate the symbols into an understandable form. This step is the decoding of the message. The next one, the noise represents communication barriers that distort the clarity of the message, such as perceptual problems, information overload, semantic difficulties, or cultural differences. The last one is the feedback, where it is the check on how successful we have been in transferring our messages as originally intended. As I have mentioned before, the channel for communication may vary among other people. For the first one is that formal channels. Formal channels are established by the organization and transmit messages related to the professional activities of members. They traditionally follow the authority chain within the organization. Other forms of messages, such as personal or social, follow informal channels, which are spontaneous and emerge as a response to individual choices.
Okay, now we go to the next topic, which is communication direction and interpersonal communication. So direction of communication is divided into two communication, which are vertical communication and lateral communication. Vertical communication is include downward communication and upward communication. So downward communication is a communication that flows from one level of a group to a lower level, and the group leaders or managers use it to assign goals, provide job instructions, explain policies and procedures, point out problems that need attention, and offer feedback about performance. Here, the managers must explain the reason why a decision was made and explain it clearly and repeatedly so it can be truly effective and increase employee commitment and support of decisions, although at first they are against it. And the problem here is it's one-way nature, so the managers inform the employees but rarely accumulate their employees' advices or opinions that make the employees feel less respected when actually every people want to be respected. And the second one is upward communication. Is a communication that flows to a higher level in the group, and it's used to provide feedback to higher ups, inform them of progress toward goals, and relay current problems. Also, it keeps managers aware of how employees feel about their job, co-workers, and organization in general. And the managers rely on this communication for ideas on how the condition can be improved. To engage effective upward communication, managers can try to reduce distraction by meeting in a conference room rather than a cubicle, preparing an agenda to make sure use the boss' attention well, communicating in headlines, not paragraphs, to get the boss' attention, and supporting the headline with actionable items. And then the last one is lateral communication is a communication that flows among the same level or horizontally equivalent workers. And it's needed because it can save time and facilitates coordination, and it's informally created to short circuit the vertical hierarchy and expedite action. So, from management's point of view, it can be either good or bad because the lateral communication that occurred with management's knowledge and support can be beneficial. However, if the members decided to make a decision without their superior or boss knowledge, it will become a problem or a conflict. The next one is interpersonal communication, or how the group members transfer meaning between each other, is divided into three, which are oral communication, written communication, and nonverbal communication. So oral communication is the chief of conveying messages such as speech, formal one-on-one and group discussion, and the informal rumor mill. The advantages of oral communication are speed and feedback, which means we can convey a verbal message and receive a response in minimal time. However, it can also lead to miscommunication if the message has to pass through numbers of people because each person can interpret the message in their own way. The second one is written communication, includes memos, letters, fax transmission, email, instant messaging, etc. And the reason people choose to use written communication is because it's tangible and it's verifiable, which means both the sender and receiver have a record of the communication and can be stored for an indefinite period. But written communication is time-consuming because you can convey more information in 15 minutes oral communication than written communication, and lack of built-in feedback because it has no assurance if the message has been received or the recipient will interpret it as sender intended. And the last one is nonverbal communication. Every time we deliver a verbal message, we also impart on nonverbal communication, such as the body movements or languages, intonation, facial expressions, and physical distance. And the body language can convey the extent to which we like another and are interested in his or her views, and the perceived status between a sender and receiver, like we're more likely to position ourselves closer to people we like and touch them more often. Another example is if you read the verbatim minutes of meeting, you wouldn't grasp the impact of what was said the same way as if you had been there or could see the meeting on video because we don't know how their intonation and facial expressions are when they are speaking, whether they are gentle, mad, or confused, or when someone frequently glances at her wristwatch is giving the message she or he would prefer to terminate the conversation.
So I'm going to explain the next learning objective, which is organizational communication. So in organizational communication, there are formal small group networks, which is divided into three model: the chain model, the wheel model, and all channel model. In chain model, we can see the three level of organization, which is the top, bottom, and the middle. And in wheel model, the communication relies on a central figure to act as a conduit for all groups communications. And in all channel, it permits all members to actively communicate with each other. And the example is self-managed team where all members are free to contribute. So these are the formal small group networks effective criteria, and as you can see, the chain model has moderate speed, emergence of leader, and member satisfaction, but it has a high accuracy. And in network model, it has fast speed, high accuracy, and emergence of leader, but a low member satisfaction. And in all channel, it has fast speed, moderate accuracy, and no emergence of leader because all members are actively contributing and none of them take the leadership role, and it has a high member satisfaction. So next we have the grapevine, which is also important to organizational communication. So grapevine is an informal communication network in a group or organizations, and the characteristic of grapevine is informal. It is not controlled by management. It's perceived by most employees as being more believable and reliable than other formal communications, and it's largely used to serve the self-interest of those who use it, and it results from a desire for information about important situations, ambiguous conditions, and conditions that cause anxiety. And in grapevine, there are possibilities that rumors emerge as a response to situations that are important to us, and when there's ambiguity and under conditions that arouse anxiety. And suggestion for reducing the negative sequence or rumor in grapevine is we have to provide the information, and next we have to explain actions and decisions that may appear inconsistent, unfair, or secretive. We have to refrain from shooting the messengers and respond them calmly, rationally, and respectfully. And then the last one, we have to maintain open communication channel. So next, we have electronic communications, which is a meaningful exchange of informations at a distance by technological means, particularly through electrical signals or electromagnetic waves. So these are the example of electronic communications. First, we have email, which uses the internet to transmit and receive computer-generated text and documents. And then we have video conference, which is a real-time meetings with people at different location, which the live audio and video image lets the participants see, hear, and talk without being physically in the same locations. And we have instant or text messaging, which both use electronic media, and it's either occur in real time or use portable communication devices. Then we have blogs, which is websites about single person or an entity that are typically updated about their daily lives. And the last one we have social networking, and it's the use of internet-based social media sites to stay connected with friends, family, colleagues, customers, or clients. So in managing information, so we have challenges which are information overload and information security. So information overload describes the extensive amount of irrelevant information flowing among the employees, and the example is endless computer files and millions of email messages. And to overcome this situation, we have to identify the priorities and understand the importance, and also put a limit on information gathering. And the next one we have information security. So security is a huge concern for nearly all organizations with private or proprietary information about clients, customers, and employees. And to overcome this situation, we have to keep the system up to date, and we have to establish a process for the backup and recovery of essential data, and we have to have management solutions that restricts users from accessing data that they do not need to see.
I'm going to explain about communication channels and persuasive communication. Choice of communication channels. The model of media richness helped explain an individual choice of communication channel vary in capacity to convey information. So from exhibit 11 and 6, we can sort from the lowest channel richness. It is the formal reports, bulletin, memos, and letters. And for the highest channel richness is video conference or the face-to-face conversation. Here's a characteristic of rich channels, such as face-to-face conversation. The first one is handle multiple cues simultaneously. And the second one is facilitate rapid feedback. And the last one is are very personal in context. Persuasive communication. In this slide, we talk about one of the functions of communication and the features that might make messages more or less persuasive to an audience. Automatic and control processing. First one is automatic processing. Automatic processing is a relatively superficial consideration of evidence and information, making use of heuristics. So, as an example, we talk about buying a soda. Did you carefully research a brand, or you just based on your instinct to get the soda, or you just get the most appealing advertising image? So we do not need more effort to maintain information to buy a soda. And on the other hand, there is controlled processing. It is a detailed consideration of evidence and information relying on facts, figures, and logic. For example, is choosing a place to live. We took more effort on gain information about a place to live rather than buying a soda. In persuasive communication, there are few rules of thumb for determining what type of processing an audience will see. So the first one is interest level. Interest levels reflect the impact of a decision is going to have on your life. When people are very interested in the outcome of a decision, they're more likely to process information more carefully. For example, people tend to look more information while deciding place to live rather than buying a soda. And the second one is prior knowledge. People who are very well informed about a subject area are likely to be much harder to persuade. Other than that, people who are poorly informed about a topic can change their minds more readily. And the third one is personality. The first personality is high in need for cognition, a personality trait of individual who are most likely to persuaded by evidence and facts. And the second personality is lower need for cognition. It is a personality that is more likely to use automatic processing strategies, and they are relying on intuition, emotion to guide their evaluation of persuasive messages. And the last one is message characteristic itself. So, automatic processing happens when the audience is poorly informed, low in need for cognition, and information is transmitted through relatively lean channels. So, on the other hand, when the audience is interested in the topic, when they are high in need for cognition, or when the information is transmitted through rich channels, and then it is better the idea to focus on rational arguments and evidence to make it more persuasive.
So we move to the next learning objective, which is barriers to effective communication and global implication. There are many barriers to effective communication. The first one is filtering. Filtering refers to a sender's purposely manipulating information so it will be seen as more favorable by the receiver. For example, telling the boss what she wants to hear. The more levels in an organization structure, the more opportunities there are for filtering. The next is information overload. It occurs when the information we have to work with exceeds our processing capacity. The result is the tendency to select out, ignore, pass over, or forget information, or put it aside until the overload situation is over. The result is lost information and less effective communication. The next barrier is selective perception. It describes how receivers selectively see and hear based on their needs, motivation, experience, background, and other personal characteristics. Receivers project their interests and expectation into communication as they decode them. Okay, so moving on to the next barriers, it is emotion because it also influences how people receive message. People in negative moods are more likely to scrutinize message in greater detail, whereas those in positive moods tend to accept communication at face value. Extreme emotions such as jubilation or depression are most likely to hinder effective communication. The next barrier is language because message senders tend to incorrectly assume the words and terms they use mean the same to the receiver as to them. But even when we are communicating in the same language, words mean different things to different people. Age and context are two of the biggest factors that influence such difference. The next barrier is silence. And it's easy to ignore silence or lack of communication because it is defined by the absence of information. However, research suggests using silence and withholding communication are common and problematic. Silence is less likely where minority opinions are treated with respect, where group identification is high, and high procedural justice prevails. And the next barrier is communication apprehension. An estimated 5 to 20% of the population suffers from communication apprehension. They experience undue tension or anxiety in oral and or written communication. They might find it difficult to talk with others face-to-face or on the telephone. Studies show oral communication apprehensive avoid situations for which oral communication is a dominant requirement. Managers should be aware of the impact of communication apprehension on job performance. And the final barrier to effective communication is outright misrepresentation of information or lying. The problem is there are no nonverbal or verbal cues unique to lying. Averting your gaze, pausing, and shifting your posture can also be signals of nervousness, shyness, or doubt. In some, the frequency of lying and the difficulty in detecting liars make this an especially strong barrier to effective communication in organization. Now we will move to the last learning objective, which is cultural factors. Cross-cultural barriers increase the potential for communication problems. First, there are barriers caused by semantics. Words mean different things to different people. Some words do not translate between cultures. For example, English terms such as efficiency, free market, and regulation are not directly translatable into Russian. Second, there are barriers caused by word connotation. Words imply different things in different language. For example, the Japanese word okay means yes but may mean yes, I am listening, not yes, I agree. Third, there are barriers caused by tone difference. In some cultures, language is formal. In others, it's informal. The tone changes depending on the context. And the last is there are cultural difference in tolerance for conflict and methods for resolving conflicts. Individuals from individualist cultures tend to be more comfortable with direct conflicts and will make the source of their disagreements overt. Collectivists are more likely to acknowledge conflict only implicitly and avoid emotionally charged disputes. They may attribute conflicts to the situation more than to the individuals and therefore may not require explicit apologies to repair relationships, whereas individualists prefer explicit statements accepting responsibility for conflicts and public apologize to restore relationships. Cultures tend to differ in the importance to which context influence meaning, illustrated here in Exhibit 11.8. Countries like China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam are high-context culture. They rely heavily on nonverbal and subtle situational cues when communicating with others. What is not said may be more significant than what is said. A person's official status, place in society, and reputation carry considerable weight, and public apologies to restore relationship. People from Europe and North America reflect their low-context cultures. They rely essentially on words to convey meaning. Body language or formal titles are secondary to spoken and written words. When communicating with people from a different culture, what can you do to reduce misinterpretation? Fred Kashmir, a leading expert in intercultural communication research, and other experts offer the following suggestion, such as know yourself, foster a climate of mutual respect, fairness, and democracy, learn the cultural context of each person. When in doubt, listen, state facts, not your interpretation, consider the other person's viewpoint, and proactively maintain the identity of the group. So that's all from our group. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.